Hi, everybody. This is Renelle Delmont again, and I'm here with my friend Kurt Tolksdorf. That's his first name is on the screen, but his last name is spelled Tolksdorf, like Frank. And in part one, Kurt gave us a background of his research, also a background of his family connections to Richard Hauptmann. If you were just tuning in, watch part one where he explains his father and grandfather's connection to Richard by way of they were they were friends as he was a new immigrant, and they all worked in the woodworking industry. Anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. Right now, we're in the middle of bringing you Jaffe. And those of you who don't know about this case, you can see his name on the screen there with a picture of him on the left, a retired professor, and Kurt is going to explain all this again. Dr. John F. Condon, in case Kurt forgets to mention, J for John, F for Francis, and C for Condon, came to be known as Jaffe or JC. That's what he called himself. Kurt, want to add to that and continue with your ransom note assessment? This is 72 pages of very hard work Kurt put together to analyze the 15 ransom notes that were received before the baby's body was found in the woods. Go ahead, Kurt.
Jackson. So I had mentioned that on Tuesday, March 8th, Dr. Condon managed to place in the Bronx Home News an ad offering to be the go-between in the negotiation to return the Lindbergh baby. And he offered to go anywhere and do anything that it would take. And he even offered $1,000 of his own money, in addition to the $50,000 that Lindbergh was going to have to pay. So he posted this ad in the Bronx Home News, and that's on the next page.
Okay.
This is not the ad itself. This is actually a notice in the Bronx Home News that pointing the reader to the ad. And it says, Dr. John F. Condon offers to add $1,000 of his savings to ransom the Lindbergh child.
And what connection? Was he a member of the family? What was his interest in
He was merely a patriotic American.
Right.
Who was outraged that Lindbergh and his wife should be subjected to such a revolting crime.
Right. Just want to make that clear that he was no relative of anybody.
Right.
Go ahead.
And the notice was published on March 8th, and the very next day, Condon received a letter from the kidnapper mailed to his home on Decatur Avenue in the Bronx. And it says, Dear Sir, if you are willing to act as go-between in Lindbergh case, please follow strictly instruction. Handel, that's Handel, enclosed letter personally to Mr. Lindbergh. It will explain everything. Don't tell anyone about it. As soon we find out the press or police is notified, every ding are cancel, and it will be a further delay. Notice every ding has a little German ring to it. After you get the money from Mr. Lindbergh, put them 3 words in the New York American, money is ready. After note, we will give you further instruction. Don't be afraid. We are not out for your $1,000. Keep it, only act strictly. Be at home night between 6 to 12. By this time, you will hear from us.
And this is on what day of the kidnapping already?
This is a week after the kidnapping. This is November 8th. November 9th. Condon receives this letter along with a note to be given to Lindbergh. This is the very day after his own note is published in the Bronx Home News.
Do you think in ordinary kidnapping, the guy is waiting 8 days to tell them what to do about the money?
Well, that's kind of the point of this presentation, Ronald.
Yeah,
You hit it on the head.
that's why I'm glad you're doing this, because
Yeah,
it brings it all home that this makes no sense. None of it.
right.
Should I go to the next page, Kurt?
Well, this one is good.
Okay.
This page is good. There is a note. There is a note in the letter to Dr. Condon. There is a note that is to be given to Lindbergh, and it says, "Dear sir, Mr. Condon may act as go-between. You may give him the $70,000. Make one packet. The size will be about." And it shows the drawing of a box, 6 inches by 7 inches by 14 inches. And it goes on, "We have notified you already in what kind of bills. We warn you not to set any trap in any way." I love the way the trap is spelled with 2 P's. "If you or someone else will notify the police, there will be a further delay. After we have the money in hand, we will tell you where to find your boy. You may have an airplane ready. It is about 150 miles away, but before telling you the address, a delay of 8 hours will be between." So he's rambling on and rambling on. Next
Yeah,
slide.
the kidnapper's a real yenta.
He's a whatever he's doing, he's not getting down to brass tacks.
He's creating a soap opera here. Go ahead.
Instead of simplifying the task of collecting the ransom, the kidnapper has, one, tapped a go-between, two, mandated the placement of newspaper messages to signal Lindbergh's willingness to pay. And finally, he's deferred details of how the ransom is to be conveyed until the police and newspapers are absent, whenever that will be. Why he's doing all this is a little hard to understand.
Makes no sense.
So one day that interview with Lindbergh took place on in the wee hours of Thursday morning, March 10th, and that day after Dr. Condon made his trip down to Highfields to see Lindbergh and show him the note that he received. The very next day, he goes back with Colonel Breckinridge to his own home in the Bronx.
And Breckinridge remains for a couple of months in his house, doesn't he?
Right.
2 or 3 months until the baby is found on May 12th, or does he remain there?
I don't know if Breckinridge is there that long. He's certainly there for a while.
A very long time. Yeah.
So we ask, why does the kidnapper sorry, then you want to go back one slide. So on Friday, March 11th, Condon receives a phone call from a man with a guttural voice, and this is supposed to be the kidnapper. And the guttural voice with the pronounced German accent that had been described by Mrs. Condon said, "Did you get my letter with the signature?" The word signature was pronounced signature. Carefully as I listened, I studied pronunciation, inflection, accent. Condon loves to cast himself as a very, very astute observer.
Just a minute. What you're reading is Japsy Tells All the book, or Japsy
This
from
is Japsy Tells All the book. This is
the
not
book?
the
Because
book.
the Liberty articles, I think, are different in some regard, aren't they?
I don't think so.
Were the Liberty magazine articles from the book, or the book came from? I forgot.
I think the book came after the Liberty articles.
Okay, so the Liberty articles might be different.
Right.
I never
It's
thought
possible. I never looked at them. I have a PDF of Japsy Tells All, and
Right.
that's what I've been working with for the longest time.
So, in other words, this quotation is from the book, not from the Liberty magazine articles, or from
I believe, yes,
you.
that's
In
true.
other words, you took this from directly from the book that you're reading.
Right.
Okay.
So the kidnapper goes on. He says, "Stay in every night this week," he ordered crisply. "Stay at home from 6 to 12. You will receive a note with instructions. Act accordingly, or all will be off. I shall stay in, I promised." That's Jeffsy replying on the telephone. Quite distinctly, as I finished my assurance that I would await his message, I heard someone say, "Stati zitto." The voice that uttered these words was not the voice of the kidnapper. And "stati zitto" was an Italian phrase, the equivalent of our American admonition, "shut up." So for the first time, we see that there is some Italian influence in this case. And it's possible that somebody associated with the kidnapper is an Italian. Now that's
Yeah, go ahead.
what's also interesting is that Jeffsy looked at that secret symbol on the ransom notes, and he claimed that a friend of his had described it to him as a trigamba, an Italian symbol. But of course, a real trigamba is something different than the intersection of the two circles.
You have a picture of it here later on, so we'll
Yeah,
get.
I eliminated that trigamba.
Oh, you took
I
it out.
eliminated that picture. I didn't want us to get distracted with it.
Okay.
Of the Italian influence in the case
Yeah.
is of course it's important. It's important, but it's not the point that I'm trying to get to here.
Right. Mhm. Okay, so you're asking this good question. Why is a kidnapper so free and open with content?
Yeah, yeah. Why isn't he much more cagey about talking to Condon on the telephone?
And the money, that isn't that the reason, they took a baby supply. And by the way, I wanted to interrupt you, but I didn't. Obviously, everybody was looking at gangs. Nobody, right? Am I wrong about that? Do you know of anybody who suggested that it was an individual that did this? Nobody. From the beginning, they were all looking for a gang.
Why it is that Lindbergh contacts first the racketeer Oni Madden, and then
Right.
the racketeers Spitali and Bits.
Exactly. They were all.
And why he does this is a little hard to fathom, because there is nothing in that nursery note that suggests that anybody from New York organized crime is at all involved in taking the baby. So why he does this is a little peculiar.
Right.
And it's one of the things that I think anybody has to address if they're going to come up with an integrated theory of the case.
Right. But I'm only suggesting to people who don't know much about the case that the idea that Richard Hauptmann ended up being the lone killer and lone extorter and lone kidnapper is so ridiculous that no investigative cop or detective thought of a single. Am I wrong about that?
Well, Lindbergh certainly didn't. I don't know what the cops were thinking at this time.
But they were all looking for gangs. That's why they went into the underworld and all this with the
Right.
Statito and even the guy on the bench. And okay, well, we'll get to that someday. Go ahead. The next night, the kidnapper hits.
So on Saturday night, March 12th, the kidnapper apparently hails the cab driver, Joseph Perrone, and asks him to deliver the seventh ransom note to Condon's residence. So the kidnapper magically appears on Gun Hill Road and Knox Place, waves down a cab driver, Perrone, and hands him this note to be delivered to Condon's residence.
Right.
Now he actually, the kidnapper supposedly stood there and wrote down the license plate of Perrone, and allowed Perrone to get a good look at him. And this will lead further on down the line, eventually at Hauptmann's trial, to Perrone identifying him as the man who gave him the ransom note.
Yeah, he was a witness at the trial. We should say that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perone was one of the witnesses to,
one of the eyewitnesses, along with
yeah,
Cecil Barr.
and he named Hauptmann as the guy on Gun Hill Road who gave him the, yeah.
Exactly. Now, why would Hauptmann, if he were the kidnapper, why would he use a cab driver to bring a note to Dr. Condon if he already knew Dr. Condon's phone number and had called him the night before? Why would he do that?
Well, the people who are listening to this don't know that there was Dr. Condon's phone number written, scribbled on the inside of a tiny closet that had no light, and Hauptmann had no telephone in his house, and Japsy's phone number was supposed.
But my point was, Ronell, that he had already called him on Friday night, March 11th.
Oh, I see what you're trying to point out, right? Why would he need a cab driver to deliver a message when he already,
Exactly,
yeah, yeah,
exactly. I
right.
think there's a reason for it.
Of course, there's a reason for everything that's going on here,
There's a
but
reason. The reason for it is to provide another eyewitness to
eyewitness.
Hauptmann's trial. That is what I believe is going on.
Mhm. Well, we should tell everybody that you and I have very different theories about the case, and each of us will eventually, okay, we do. But but your analysis, there's nothing to disagree with. I mean, this is ridiculous. This entire series of nonsensical ransom notes, they have a reason for existing, which makes no sense for any kidnapping. I don't
Right.
think there's a kidnapping in history where they corresponded for so long. I mean, it's
It would be interesting. It would be interesting to have some idea of that. But of course, I haven't done a survey of the hundreds of kidnappings that took place in that era. And
I neither have I, but I'm sure you're not going to find kidnappings where they went on for weeks like this.
right,
This
right.
they want the money, and they they don't put ransom notes on windowsills to blow away in the wind. I mean, the whole thing is utterly. You and I know this for a very long time, but we're trying to introduce people to understand the nonsense, and you're doing a great job. Go ahead, continue.
In any case, the note that was delivered by the cab driver Peroni directs Condon to find a second note near a Frankfurter stand on Jerome Avenue, and Al Reach is kind enough to drive Dr. Condon over to this place and find the second note, and that note directs him to come to or to go to the gate of Woodlawn Cemetery at 233rd Street and Jerome Avenue.
So here it is on the
And
left.
these
Here,
photos
this
are not very good. This
no,
photo actually shows the gate of
right.
the lawn cemetery.
It's hard to see, but
It's
these,
hard to see.
right,
There's an old car of the right vintage, so you know it's an old photo.
right.
This photo shows the shack and the park bench in Van Cortlandt Park, a short distance away from here, where Dr. Condon eventually persuades the kidnapper to sit down with him for over an hour and talk to him about the situation that they're in. Now,
Mm.
why the kidnapper would sit down and show himself to Dr. Condon after first asking for the money and being told that Condon doesn't have it is hard to believe.
In our conversations over the years, you're always the one reminding me, and I love um, how you say it, that when they wanted Hauptmann to be dumb, they found a way that he was dumb. And when they wanted him to be smart, he was smart. So remember, over the years, you keep saying that, and you're correct.
But it comes across very clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
In
does.
this
He's either
scenario.
dumb. Yeah, that's how they put him in the electric chair. He's when this scenario, which makes no sense, happens, well, he's stupid. But then when this scenario happens, he's brilliant. He gets into the right room at the right moment when nobody's looking in the room. I mean, either he's dumb or he's smart. He can't be. Okay, go ahead. But this is one of the stupidest things a kidnapper will do: sit on a bench with the guy that's hunting him down, right?
And his physical dimensions, his accent, which is observably German, according to Condon anyway.
Right.
All these things show a level of recklessness which is hard to fathom.
Yeah.
So here, Condon sits down with Cemetery John, and the interview takes place for an hour. The kidnapper makes a point to declare Betty Gow and Red Johnson, her boyfriend, innocent. Betty Gow, of course, was the baby's nursemaid who was at Highfields the night the baby was taken.
And Red Johnson was her boyfriend.
Right. The kidnapper identifies the safety pins that secured the baby's blanket. Note that when Condon received his note from the kidnapper and first went down to see Lindbergh at Highfields, he took the safety pins out of the baby's crib and put them in his pocket. Now he shows that he has the safety pins and he shows them to the putative kidnapper, who then says those pins secured the baby's blanket. And Condon says, aha, you are the very man who was in the nursery the night of the kidnapping and who must have taken the baby. So Condon is very, very clever, and the kidnapper is very, very stupid.
Right.
Then the kidnapper furnishes details of his gang. He's not only a single kidnapper, but he has a gang. Number one is a man who occupies a high place in the government. Then he says, he doesn't say who that is, but then he says number two in the gang is a man who knows you well, referring to Condon. So who would know Condon well?
Now, these details are according to Condon about Cemetery John.
Right? Yes, this is Condon reporting back with his interview with Cemetery John.
And let us remember to tell people, and a very important point about all of this, that Condon is the only one who ever met Cemetery John.
Right. That's correct.
Okay, and
then Cemetery John offers to send Condon the baby's sleeping suit to prove that he is in fact the authentic kidnapper, as if all of this other verbiage leading up to this and ransom notes and secret symbols did not prove that the kidnapper was in fact the person that took the baby. So in spite of all this, Cemetery John feels compelled to send Condon the sleeping suit from the baby as proof that he has him.
So then we get the sleeping suit on March 16th.
Right. And the kidnapper is now starting to express his frustration. He says, our man failed to collect the money. There are no more confidential conference after the meeting from March 12. Those arrangements too hazardous for us. We will not allow our man to confer in a way like before. Circumstance will not allow us to make a transfer like you wish. It is impossibly for us. Why should we move the baby and face danger? To take another person to the place is entirely out of question. It seems you are afraid if we are the right party and if the boy is all right. Well, you have our signature. It is always the same as the first one, especially them 3 holes.
I love that. I love that sentence, especially them 3 holes. Oh God.
So he's this Cemetery John character, whoever he is, and he has to be connected with the kidnapping itself because of the secret symbol on the note. Whoever he is, he just can't get down to cases with Condon. So the
And
letter continues on its reverse side. He says, now we will send you the sleeping suit from the baby. Besides, it means $3 extra expenses because we have to pay another one. Please tell Mrs. Lindbergh not to worry, the baby is well. We only have to give him more food as the diet says. You are willing to pay the $70,000, not $50,000 without seeing the baby first or not. Let us know about that in the New York American. We can't do it other way because we don't like to give up our safety place or move the baby. If you are willing to accept our deal, put these in the paper. I accept, money is ready. Our program is after 8 hours, we have the money received. We will notify you where to find the baby. If there is any trap, you will be responsible what will follow. So,
ay.
so this is really getting ridiculous.
Yeah,
4 days later, there's another letter. Should I read it?
go ahead. Why not?
Dear sir, you and Mr. Lindbergh know our program. If you don't accept, then we will wait until you agree with our deal. We know you have to come to us anyway, but why should Mrs. and Mr. Lindbergh suffer longer as necessary? We will not communicate with you or Mr. Lindbergh until you will see in the paper. We will tell you again, this kidnapping case was prepared for a year already, so the police won't have any luck to find us or the child. You only push everything further out. Did you send that little package to Mr. Lindbergh? It contains the sleeping suit from the baby as well. Baby.
Mhm.
That has the secret symbol again. He's
Oh,
rambling and rambling. Next slide.
yeah.
So then everything is quiet for 10 days. Why? Nobody knows. But on March 30th, another letter arrives. Dear sir, it is not necessary to furnish any code. You and Mrs. and Mr. Lindbergh know our program very well. We will keep the child on our safe place until we have the money in hand. But if the deal is not closed until the 8th of April, we will ask for $30,000 more, also not 70,000, 100,000. How can Mr. Lindbergh follow so many false clues? He knows we are the right party. Our signature is still the same as in the ransom note. But if Mr. Lindbergh likes to fool around for another month, we can't help it. Once he has to come to us anyway, but if he keeps on waiting, we will double our amount. There is absolute no fear about the child. It is well.
Okay, and a day later, still another. How many more of this? Because we're going to run
Couple
out of.
more. Are we
Okay,
running out of time, Renell?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
let's.
we could do a part three because you probably want to analyze everything that we're only
Well,
halfway through, so we could do a part three.
the next day, the kidnapper sends another note, and he's finally getting down to collecting the money. And he writes this note, and he says to put a message in the newspaper that says yes, everything okay, to signal Lindbergh's willingness or Condon's willingness to bring the money. And he says it is a very simple delivery, but we find out very soon if there is any trap.
It's tough.
After 8 hours, you get the address from the boy. On the place you find two ladies. They are innocents.
I
So
don't know any German people who talk like this. Do you?
I've never been the victim of a trap.
So here we come to that fateful night
Right.
in
The night of
St.
April
Raymond.
2nd.
Yeah.
The night of April 2nd, the mysterious cab driver brings a note to Condon's house, and the note says, Dear sir, take a car and follow Tremont Avenue to the east until you reach the number 3225 near Tremont Avenue. It is a nursery. Oh, sorry, East Tremont Avenue. It is a nursery. Bergen Greenhouses Florists. There is a table standing outside right on the door. You find a letter underneath the table covered with a stone. Read and follow instruction.
There it is.
And they go over to St. Raymond Cemetery, and sure enough, Condon meets the kidnapper. He comes back to Lindbergh, who's waiting in the car with the money, and he tells Lindbergh that he has convinced John to accept $50,000 instead of $70,000.
It's a ring.
Amazingly.
It's a
Now,
ring. Go ahead.
does this sound a little bit suspicious? Question: is this a device? Go ahead.
Whatever it is, it makes no sense. First of all, he's the only one who's a witness, so who knows what happened to the other. Well, they did give the 20 grand back to the Treasury Department, so Japsy didn't keep the 20 grand. Well, let's getting on to another subject, but we're talking about the ransom notes.
Yeah, go ahead. Next slide, Ronald.
Oh, I thought you meant, go ahead. Note how Condon convinces John. Go ahead.
Note how Condon convinces John, that is Cemetery John, to accept $50,000, saving Lindbergh $20,000. Is this a device to make it appear that Condon could not be in league with the kidnapper?
Or
maybe question. The initial hike of the ransom amount by $20,000 was deliberately done to set up this scene where Condon saves Lindbergh $20,000, and therefore it appears that he couldn't be in league with the kidnapper.
Oh, I see where you're going with that. So it was just an extra amount to prove the trustworthiness of John Condon.
Right. If anybody accused him, he'd say, "Look, I saved Lindbergh $20,000. That could have been mine if I'd been with the kidnappers."
Yeah, I see what you mean by that.
It's so transparent that
well, I have a different take on it because I don't believe a word Condon or Lindbergh ever said, and I don't believe there was a cemetery John. And I don't believe either of them. They were two big liars, especially as we all know they both lied at the trial and put him in the electric chair. So why would we believe what Condon or Lindbergh say about that night in St. Raymond's? I've always been a doubter about that whole scenario, and none of us can actually know because they're the only two eyewitnesses. Although I don't want to take up too much time with this because we're going to have to do a part 3. But go ahead. 15 notes over 32 days. Were they necessary? Ridiculous.
Why would the kidnapper carry on at such length, knowing that the baby's corpse was lying out in the open?
Bingo.
We forgot about that.
That's right.
So the question there really is, how many notes were really needed in order to collect the ransom?
1 or 2, maybe. Oh, you got one here. I love this. No cops, no press. Go ahead. Explain what you wrote here.
Yeah, one letter printed in block letters, so you couldn't have a handwriting analyst looking at it. It would say no cops, no press, spell out the ransom amounts, total 50,000, have money by March 12th, phone booth, and give an address, March 12th at 8 p.m. I will call with directions. And then at 8 p.m., the phone would ring. Lindbergh would pick it up, and they'd tell him to go to St. Raymond Cemetery in the Bronx or wherever else, and place the ransom in a safe spot where the kidnapper could see there was nobody around it, and then retire, get into his car, and drive away.
Right.
That's how any reasonable person would have attempted to collect the ransom.
Right.
Was Hauptmann too stupid for this? I don't think so.
Stupid and he's smart. He got away. I mean, he did it all by himself, and he had the 50,000. They said they proved at his trial. He did everything to outsmart everybody, and then he was dumb. I don't get it, And one more thing, you said Lindbergh would pick up the phone. Now that's interesting that you said it that way, because I've always wondered why Lindbergh needed go-betweens. This is the father of a baby that's missing. He's a world hero. He's got a lot of guns. He's a sharpshooter from the days when he was at Kelly Field, and he can't do his own baby's ransoms. I don't get it. That's part of what you're saying here is that the whole thing is cockeyed and makes no sense. And things were set up in a way. Okay, Hauptmann was a. Go ahead.
Hauptmann was a cabinet maker and working in a cabinet works in a shop,
Yeah,
and he frequently printed on shop drawings, and he didn't write in script. He printed in block letters, just
right.
like any other draftsman would.
Why didn't the kidnapper?
Why didn't the kidnapper do it that way? Well, the answer that people give is Hauptmann was stupid. He didn't think of it. But Hauptmann was also shy and taciturn. Why would he go on at such length in the ransom notes? This shy person doesn't make any sense. So here's my hypothesis. The 15 ransom notes anticipate the incriminating testimony of the handwriting experts at Hauptmann's trial. That's the only reason for all of these notes.
So you believe that Hauptmann was chosen as the scapegoat or the patsy
He was the
from
patsy, the
from way
patsy.
way before anything happened to the child? That's
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so Osborne. Should we make a front?
Remember,
Yeah,
remember, we had that second ransom note where the writing after the 4 lines, the writing became much more even.
yeah.
And when Osborne, in May of 1930,